Dad forgot my name at his retirement party, but remembered it when he saw my company. My dad forgot my name with a microphone in his hand, a room full of people clapping for him, and me standing 10 feet away holding a plastic cup of ginger ale like it was the only thing keeping my fingers from shaking. He looked right at me, eyes scanning the front table where his family sat, and when it was time to say it, when it was time to acknowledge me, he stalled. "And of course," he said, chuckling into the mic, "my kids, my son, Ryan, and my daughter." And then he just stopped. The pause stretched long enough that someone laughed softly, thinking it was a joke. My face went hot. Dad's smile tightened like he'd bitten down on something hard. He glanced at my stepmom, then back at the crowd. "You know," he said, waving his hand, "my girl." And the applause covered it, like applause always does. The banquet hall smelled like warm gravy and cheap champagne, and those little floral centerpieces that come in a plastic vase you can't keep. I could hear forks scraping plates and the squeak of chair legs on tile. Dad stood under a banner that said, "Congratulations, Greg," in giant silver letters that reflected the stage lights into everyone's eyes. He was wearing the navy suit he saves for weddings and funerals, the one that never quite fits his shoulders right. Everyone was smiling at him like he was a hero, and he was soaking it in like sunlight. Meanwhile, my stomach felt hollow, like my body had decided to evacuate. I stared at his mouth moving, my brain scrambling to make sense of what I'd just heard. It wasn't that he mispronounced it. It wasn't that he stumbled over a nickname. He literally couldn't pull Madison out of his head. My stepmom's hand lifted slightly, like she was going to help him, but then she didn't. My brother kept chewing, eyes down, like he'd rather be anywhere else. I swallowed and tasted that burn of carbonation and embarrassment. Dad's co-worker beside him, some guy in a vest who looked like he'd been practicing a toast for days, leaned in and said something into Dad's ear. Dad laughed too loudly and said, "That's right," into the mic, and then moved on. The room clapped. The room cheered. And I sat there feeling like the air had changed pressure, like my ears needed to pop. It was a Friday night in late October, and I almost didn't go. I'd been staring at the invitation on my kitchen counter for a week, the paper slowly curling at the corners because it was printed on cheap card stock. Retirement celebration for Greg Clark, it said, like he was the main character of everyone's life. The RSVP line had my stepmom's handwriting, rounded and neat. "Madison, please come." It would mean a lot to him. The last part made me snort the first time I read it because if something means a lot to my dad, he usually remembers its name. My dad and I have always had this relationship that looks fine from the outside and feels like static from the inside. He worked at the same manufacturing plant for 37 years. He's the kind of guy who measures his worth in hours worked and sick days not taken. He provided in the most literal sense, mortgage paid, lights on, shoes on our feet. But affection in our house was like a language he never learned. Compliments came out awkward and clipped. Apologies didn't exist. If you were upset, you were being dramatic. If you needed something emotionally, you were overthinking. When I was a kid, he called me Mads sometimes, but mostly I was kiddo or hey. When I got older, I became your sister to my brother and the girl in Dad's stories. He didn't mean it cruelly, not consciously. It was more like I was an accessory to the life he was living, an item in the background that he assumed would always be there. Ryan, my younger brother, was the sun in Dad's universe. Ryan played baseball. Ryan worked summers with Dad. Ryan went into the same industry, the same plant, the same trajectory. Dad loved that. It made him feel like his life made sense. I was the one who wanted different things. I left for college. I moved cities. I started a business. I changed. Dad reacted to all of that like it was a phase I'd grow out of, like I'd eventually circle back and become something he understood. The thing people don't get about being the independent one is that you're not born that way. You get trained into it. You learn not to ask. You learn to make your own plan, then you learn to pretend you didn't need anyone's approval when it doesn't come. You learn to show up anyway, smiling because you don't want to be accused of holding a grudge. So, I told myself I'd go to the retirement party because it was one night. I told myself it would be fine. I told myself I wouldn't care if Dad was distant because I was used to it. I even bought a gift like a dutiful daughter. A nice watch with a simple engraving on the back. Congratulations, Dad. Proud of you. I imagined giving it to him, maybe getting a rare moment of softness. That was the story I let myself carry into that banquet hall. Then he forgot my name into a microphone. After the toast, I excused myself, because if I stayed at that table one more second, I was going to either cry or say something sharp enough to ruin the night. I walked fast toward the bathroom, heels clicking too loud. In the hallway outside, the air was cooler and smelled faintly like bleach. I pushed into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My lipstick looked too bright. My eyes looked glossy. I put my hands on the sink and breathed slowly, feeling the cold porcelain under my palms. In one stall, someone was quietly blowing their nose. I heard laughter from the banquet hall muffled through the wall, like the party was happening in a different world. I told myself over and over, it's not a big deal. It's just a name. He's nervous. He's old. He's on a stage. But my throat still burned because it wasn't just the name. It was the confirmation. It was the public version of what I'd spent years pretending didn't hurt. When I went back out, Dad was off the stage, being hugged and slapped on the back and handed drinks. People were forming a loose crowd around him, like he was a magnet. Ryan was already there, laughing with Dad's coworkers, wearing that easy confidence he gets around Dad because he's always known he belongs. I tried to hover at the edge because that's what I've done my whole life in that family. Wait for a moment where it feels safe to step in. My stepmom spotted me first and gave me a tight smile, the kind that says please behave. There you are, she said, and kissed my cheek like we were close. He was just nervous up there. I looked at her. He forgot my name, I said quietly. She flinched like I'd cursed. Don't take it personally, she whispered, leaning in. He's had a lot going on. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to ask what exactly had been going on that replaced his daughter's name. But I didn't. I just nodded, because she wanted peace more than truth, and that's been her role since she entered my dad's life. I was about to slip back toward the table when I saw it, my company's name, printed in clean black letters on a white sign by the gift table, Harbor and Hart Consulting. Under it, in smaller text, it said, "Proud to celebrate Greg Clark's retirement." There was a sleek gift basket beside the sign with a card tucked into the ribbon. My stomach did this weird flip. For a second, I thought my brain was inventing it, like when you think you see someone you know in a crowd. I walked closer, blinking, and it stayed there. It was real. My company. At Dad's retirement. I didn't put it there. I stood frozen, staring at my own logo like it had betrayed me. Then I remembered, 2 months ago, the plant had reached out to me. Not Dad, not Ryan, someone in HR. They'd found my company online, saw that we do compliance training and safety audits for industrial sites, and asked if I could consult on a new procedure rollout. It was a small contract, but it was steady work, and it mattered. I'd done it professionally, carefully, proud of it. I never told Dad because I didn't want him to turn it into one of his dismissive little comments. Must be nice, playing business. And because I didn't want my achievement filtered through his approval. Apparently, HR loved the work. Apparently, they decided to sponsor part of the retirement event. Maybe as a thank you. Maybe as a networking thing. And there was my logo, smack in the middle of the room, louder than I'd ever been allowed to be. I heard Dad's voice behind me. Harbor and Hart. He read slowly, and I could hear the shift in his tone, the curiosity, the respect he saves for real things. That's the company that did the audit. I didn't move. I didn't turn around yet. My fingers curled lightly around the edge of the gift tablecloth. Dad stepped closer. That was a good presentation, he said, like he was reviewing a job well done. Then he paused. Wait. His voice changed again, sharper, like a connection forming. That's your... I turned and met his eyes. For the first time all night, he looked fully at me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. Madison, he said, and he said it clearly, like he'd been practicing it in his head. That's your company. There it was. My name. Delivered cleanly. because it was attached to something he recognized as impressive. I felt something rise in my chest that wasn't exactly anger and wasn't exactly sadness. It was this bitter, aching mix of both. "Yeah," I said. "It's mine." Dad's eyebrows lifted, and for a second, he looked almost proud. "I didn't know you were doing that kind of work," he said. "You never said." I laughed, but it came out tight. "You didn't ask," I said. His mouth opened, then closed. The crowd noise around us felt suddenly far away. I could see Ryan watching from across the room, alert now, like he sensed something brewing. My stepmom drifted closer, smile already prepared. Dad tried to recover like he always does, by moving forward instead of looking back. "Well," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder a little too hard. "That's something. That's really something." He looked at the sign again like it validated me. "You did good, Mads." I stared at his hand on my shoulder and felt my skin prickle. "You forgot my name 5 minutes ago," I said quietly. Dad's face tightened. "Don't do this here," he murmured. "I didn't do it," I replied. "You did." My stepmom's eyes widened slightly, warning. "Madison," she whispered, tone sweet but sharp underneath. "Not tonight." Dad's voice dropped lower. "I was on stage," he said. "It's loud. I was nervous. People forget things." "My name isn't a thing," I said, and my voice shook a little no matter how hard I tried to keep it steady. "It's the easiest part of being my dad." Dad's jaw flexed. He glanced toward the crowd, toward Ryan, toward the stage, toward anywhere that wasn't my face. "You're making a scene," he said, like the problem was my reaction, not the wound. I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to say 100 things. I wanted to list every moment I'd been reduced to an afterthought. Every time he praised Ryan's job and brushed off mine. Every birthday card addressed to kiddo. Every phone call where he asked about my work like it was a hobby. Every holiday where I felt like a visitor in my own history. Instead, I did something I've never done with him. I stopped trying to convince him. "I'm going to head out," I said, and my voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. Dad blinked.
"What?"
"No, you just got here." "I came," I said. "I showed up. I bought you a gift." I sat there and listened. I looked at him, really looked, and felt the strange, hollow clarity of giving up on a hope you didn't realize you were still carrying. "But I'm not staying to watch you remember me only when it benefits your image." My stepmom's mouth opened, scandalized. "Madison." Dad's face went stiff with that familiar defensiveness. "So, what? You're punishing me?" "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself." I walked to the table, grabbed my coat, and picked up the gift bag I'd brought. Not dramatically, just quietly, like it still belonged to me. Ryan started to stand like he might stop me, but he didn't. He just watched, his expression unreadable. As I moved toward the exit, Dad followed a few steps behind, voice urgent now. "Mads," he said again, like saying it twice could undo the earlier damage. "Come on. Don't leave like this." I paused at the doorway, where the cool night air slipped in every time someone opened it. The sounds of the party swelled behind me. Laughter, clinking glasses, someone starting a new round of applause for a different speech. I turned back. Dad looked older in that doorway light. Not frail, just suddenly human, stripped of the stage. "I'm not asking you to be perfect," I said. "I'm asking you to care enough to know me, without needing a logo to remind you I exist." His eyes flickered like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to explain himself, like he wanted to say it wasn't that bad. Then his shoulders sagged slightly. "I'm trying," he said, and it sounded almost true. I nodded. "Try harder," I said. Then I left. I sat in my car with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, breathing slowly until the shaking stopped. My phone buzzed once. A text from Dad. "Drive safe, Madison." He spelled it right.
"No nickname. No kiddo."
My name, clean and clear. It shouldn't have meant anything.
It did.
I don't know what happens next. I don't know if one small moment of accountability changes 30 years of emotional laziness. I do know that I'm done shrinking myself to fit into someone else's comfort. My company exists without his approval. My life exists without his attention. And if he wants a relationship with me now, it can't be the kind where I'm only real when other people can see me. Thanks for watching. If you've ever had a parent overlook you until something external forced them to notice, share your story in the comments. I genuinely love to hear it.